With the recent news coverage on the 50 million is that there was a recommendation from an advisor that if you were to win a serious amount, put it in a 6-month term deposit straight away to basically give yourself that like downtime.
Cool off
so
period.
that, so you don't make any short-term like panicked, really
like
emotional.
me answering that question.
Yeah,
I was like,
and it's like maybe, you know, that's a great idea. Like, I don't know, take $20,000 out and then put the rest aside, and then you can kind of blow your 20K on some fun stuff or a little holiday or doing some shopping or whatever. But then you force yourself to have some downtime to really like cool off. And then also, if you do have people coming out of the woodwork to come and ask you for financial favors, you've got a genuine reason to be like, I don't even have access to the money right now, so come back in 6 months. And
by then I'll move it into something else.
Yeah, exactly. By then I would have thought of a proper reason to say no to you.
Welcome to It's No Secret, a podcast for Kiwis who want their money questions answered.
Ready, steady, go.
This podcast will answer the money questions you may or may not have on your mind. We'll talk to real Kiwis and share truths about our own financial lives.
Both the successes and the failures. Because the truth is, there is no secret to achieving financial freedom. Hello and welcome to It's No Secret. I'm Kat.
And I'm Christine.
And today we're back with another money Q&A episode. This week we are kicking into 3 questions from listeners of the pod. Bit of a random mix, but hey, here we are. It's all good. Now to start with the recent Powerball prize pool reaching a whopping $50 million and getting a ton of media. There has been some chatter, particularly in the office, but I feel like probably in everybody's homes as well, about what you would do if you won any amount of money, but particularly such a large sum. At some point, we've probably all dreamed about winning the lotto, so we thought that we would revisit some of the more emotional aspects and chat through the question 1 of basically what you would do if you did win the lotto and what are some of the pitfalls. So, Christine, I'm just going to throw you a quick question, which is what would you actually personally spend the money on?
If I won $50 million?
Yeah.
Yep.
Or any lotto amount. I feel like 50 really opens up to a whole world of possibilities. But let's assume you're like the $7 million winner, which is what actually happened.
Yeah, but we're not, it's a bit more than 20,000. Like kind of vibe. Yeah. It's not like, oh, okay, I'll probably put that in investments, you know?
Exactly.
I reckon, let's
7
say if
figures.
it was 7 million. Okay. I would definitely do something fun first. Okay. Just to like, you know.
First?
Oh, maybe not first, but that was the first thing I thought of. I'm like, there needs to be a little bit for me.
I won't critique it as you're saying. Continue. Go.
I don't know, maybe like go on that trip that we were talking about in the latest Money Moments episode or something. But I mean, obviously I'm going to invest the majority of that in some form. I think I'll probably buy a property. Because, you know, maybe that's like 1.5 mil or, you know, that amount. And then I'd probably
live mortgage free.
Yeah, that would be nice. Although, you know, is it expense free? No. And then I would probably put maybe another, I don't know, what's that? The 2-3 mil in index funds probably, because I don't really need to be a property mogul. Like I don't need to leverage. And then I would probably, have to say I'd gift some, but I wouldn't gift it in dollar amount. I would buy the asset for the person.
Interesting. So she's only gifting
rent.
Assets.
Yeah, or like pay rent or something that's like, I'm going to help you out, but I'm not going to give you cash because I don't want you to spend it in your way. I'm going to spend it on your behalf for you because I feel like I want to make the responsible decision.
Interesting.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Though, like maybe I could pay off my sister's mortgage or my mum's mortgage or like invest some money for Annie, which is my sister's kid, you know, stuff like that. And then what else would I do? Yeah, probably a bit of fun, like maybe upgrade the car, you know, those kinds of things. Yeah, go shopping spree, you know. Oh, and then maybe I think I probably
you've basically used all the money now.
Yeah,
I mean, some of it is as investments and in your new house, but you've used all the money.
I think I'd probably also maybe like invest in some businesses, like so do some super high risk stuff. Of like find some entrepreneurs and be like, I'm going to back you. Okay,
so question: why are you doing high risk stuff? Is it because you're like, this is free money?
Well, I think if I'm going to try to be responsible with like 80% of it or 90% of it, then I can, it's like the core satellite, you know, you can have some satellites.
Good justification.
Yeah, totally.
That for you.
What about you, Kat? What are you doing with it?
I will tell you in a second, but I feel like I just want to say this really makes me highlight the whole, like, what are the common mistakes that people make when they come into a big sum? Because I feel like you didn't make any mistakes, but the thing that catches people out is they like if you tallied all of those things that you want to do up, you would run out of $7 million super fast.
Yeah, maybe.
You know, in a good way.
Yeah. But I invested the majority of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, but I don't reckon you'd even invest the majority of it, because once you buy a house for like 1.5 mil, which is probably not even enough for you to buy like your forever home.
No.
You know, like you're buying a like 2 or 3 better 1 bath, like smaller place in Auckland. Plus then you pay off like, let's just assume, I don't know your sister's financials, but let's assume you pay off like close to $1 million of mortgage for her.
No, it's more like 400-500.
Well, let's say we'll pay off like 500k and then we'll pay off 500k for someone else.
Sure.
Okay, we're at 2.5 million, so you've got like 3.5 left.
Yeah.
And then you want to invest 3.
Yeah.
And then you've got $500,000 to like go on a dream holiday,
And
buy I'm going to assume you're going to
car.
buy a Range Rover. You're
No,
gonna,
it's
like,
a green Mini.
okay, you're buying a green Mini. That's still probably like
That is
100k.
The dream car.
100k, 50k on a holiday.
Yeah.
And then you've got like, probably 200 grand left for
Buffer.
business investments.
Split it in 450k each.
But this is the thing. It's like,
But also, I'm not quitting my job at this point, so I'm still going to have an income, and we still have
and
assets.
you've got the 3 million invested. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, but
Just
I think
to
it's one of
defend
those
my
things,
ideas.
I think they're great ideas. They're great ideas. But I guess what the challenge that people have is like, you can see very quickly how without some kind of discipline or like a very clear idea, it would be really easy to like go through that money quite quickly.
Yeah.
And you've made a great call of like still investing $3 million of it.
Yeah.
But I think people often think like,
It's not even half though.
See, this is kind of my point, which is where Luke and I have hotly debated this in the past of.
Oh yeah.
And I mentioned this to you guys.
It was like a casual walk, like a nature walk,
always.
and you're like, let's dream.
Every time we walk past the dairy and they have the signs up about like what the Lotto jackpot is, we will talk about like, oh, what would you do if you won this? And
nice.
People are going to be like, oh my God, don't say this. But my strong standing point is like, there is a threshold in which Lotto has to be over for it to like super change your life and change the life for all of those around you.
Okay.
And I would hypothetically argue that like, while $7 million is a lot of money, and I don't want to take away from that, it is not necessarily enough to change your life. Because if Luke and I both wanted to quit our jobs and replace our income, we'd have to invest like 3 to 5 million of that money to do that.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
And well, first of all, we're paying off $1 million mortgage. So, okay, we're down to 6. Then we want to pay off everybody else's mortgage. That's another $1 million, easy, probably another $1.5 million. Like, and when I say everybody else's, I mean like
Mum,
residual.
sister,
Exactly. Residual on mums, brothers, sisters. Luckily, Luke and I only have one sibling each. So narrows down the pool.
Like,
but you have a bigger family. Therefore, it becomes harder.
Yeah.
Or maybe you want to buy those people a house if they don't own a property. We would also probably want to upgrade our property. So then I'm like, okay, if we did that, we're spending $3 million. So that's my 7 already gone, basically.
There's no holidays in there.
Oh, God, no. And then if you did want to quit your job, like, you know, off a 4% return to get like 200K pre-tax, you're investing $5 million.
Well, yeah.
Right?
There you go, yeah.
And that's the kind of, it's like, if you want it to be truly life-changing, you have to be super disciplined about that stuff. And I mean, not necessarily saying that everybody should just quit their job and then become like potentially.
I feel like you'd probably get bored.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think it's certainly one of those things, particularly with like where house prices are in Auckland. If you're in a like central city area, you know, you can very quickly use the money on property and other things. So
do you know what? I'm actually kind of surprised that you said that you pay off your mortgage. I would. You would? You wouldn't like...
No.
Okay,
I'd be entirely debt-free and
debt.
just wouldn't bother.
Yeah, nice. Okay.
Yeah, I'd pay off my mortgage. I'd keep our current house.
Yeah.
And like rent, or probably not rent it out. I mean, if you've got money, I'm like, fuck it, I'm not going to rent it. I'll just let mum and dad stay there when they like have it for friends.
Yeah.
You know, what's the point of being rich if you can't do nice stuff? So do that and then... Yeah, but then I definitely like we would have to upsize a house. And to upsize a house in Mount Eden, like for something materially
like
better
3 mil?
or more, I reckon we would be upwards of 3.5 to get a 4-bedroom, like 2-bathroom, backyard, maybe a pool. I mean, if I'm going to win if I'm winning $7 million, I want a pool.
But we have to pay
standards.
But don't forget, we're paying off everyone else's mortgage, right?
Well, we are. And see, to your point about like how would you help out family, I think that would probably be my thing. Is I would. When Luke and I have talked about it, I'm like, I'm pretty okay with paying off people's mortgages, but not necessarily so much like giving them. I wouldn't give people lump sums of money.
Yeah, no, neither.
No.
Yeah, I am.
I would let them potentially like have some kind of income stream or distribution from the pool of money
Nice.
that is invested, but that would obviously be like, or, you know, do the things where it's like, hey, we want to go on holiday and we'll like pay for
something.
Exactly, pay for people's airfares and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, nice.
So, yeah.
But I mean, I guess at the core of it though is that it could, whilst maybe it's not the like 50 mil, it will still definitely significantly improve your financial situation
100%.
currently,
and it
right?
does give you the opportunity to not
flexibility.
work.
Yeah.
I think the caveat with that is like people perhaps don't appreciate that if they truly want it to be the life-saving or changing thing where they then don't have to work, you have to invest that money or like really put a vast majority of that money to work. You can't, as we've talked about, invest it in your house because
you can't sell a bathroom to fund your retirement.
Exactly. And like, well, it's not, I'm in a really long-term retirement now. Retiring at the age of 34.
Yeah, true.
Years and years and years and years. How are you going to fund 50 years, 60 years?
Yeah, take that 7 mil, divide it out, and then be like, is that even enough to live on for every year?
Exactly. So, I think that's where people potentially, you know, and if, they potentially get into trouble, particularly if you've not invested before and then you're right back into the square one of like, investing a materially large sum of money, having not invested, people can be open to like scams, shit advice, like all the things, family and friends telling them like, do this, do that, you know, invest in this property, invest in my business, like all that kind of stuff. Ooh, just, so yeah. Which leads on to my second question of like, if you had a sudden windfall, would you tell your friends and family? And maybe we can expand this to like, even if, I mean, I was about to say inheritance, it'd be a bit hard to not tell your family. But let's say you had a like long distant relative that you'd never known about, and then all of a sudden one day you were the only person written into the will and you inherited $2 million. Like, would you tell your sister?
Oh, I think, yeah.
She's feeling stressed.
Yeah, I'm like, what would I do? I think I probably would tell my immediate family, but I wouldn't be like shouting it out from the rooftops and probably telling like extended friends and things, because you just don't want to become like the bank of Lotto basically, right?
True.
Funny though, I don't know where I was reading this about this person who had worked really hard over time, built up an asset base, had like 3 houses or something, a really great investment portfolio, and they actively chose not to tell their family that they were in that financial position because their family had not come from that, like from wealth basically. And so they chose that, you know, they didn't want them to basically bludge off them and have this perception,
come to them with requests.
And then just maybe like you change your view of like, oh well, Christine can shower me this, and because you have money there, you know, like, and I was like, that's quite an interesting way to think about it. What would you do?
I think it depends a little bit on the amount of money, because if I won $7 million, I wouldn't be able to hide it. I'd be you guys would be like, oh, where are you getting that money from? Taking time off work.
She's going away for 6 months. Like what?
And also I'm like an open book, so I think I would really struggle. Whereas say if it was, but then it also depends. If it was, I was about to say, if it was a lesser amount of money, like an inheritance, which I have received in the past from a grandparent, it's like I have not necessarily outwardly told people that, but if people have asked me, like one thing recently was, I was catching up with some friends and they hadn't seen the ring that I bought from like my grandma's inheritance, and they were like, wow, like this is beautiful, like where did you get this? And they thought I had it made from like existing jewelry, and I was like, oh no, I didn't, I just bought it. And they were like, oh my god. I'm like, yeah, but guys, like from an inheritance, it's, you know, I kind of gave them the context. Exactly. I gave them the context of where it came from. And so I think in those instances, yes, but then you're not sort of like necessarily shouting it from the rooftops or being really specific about like exactly how much money you did receive.
I think that's a very good point though. It's like visually there will be a difference depending on how much you win basically.
I think as well, it really depends on your personality, because I can imagine like I would not have any problems saying no to people if they ask me for money. I just if I won $10 million and all of a sudden people came out of the woodwork and were asking me for things, I think I'd be quite comfortable. Yes. Or even like friends, you know, asking for like short-term loans, all that kind of stuff. I would basically be like, nah. Whereas sorry, Luke, I'm going to throw you under the bus here. As an inherent people pleaser, I feel like, and just the type of personality he is, I think he would really struggle with that.
Yep.
And so I imagine that would also play into like how secretive or just private you need to be about those things so that you don't feel like you're constantly being put in a position that you're really challenged with.
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas I'd be like, yeah, everybody know about it. Come and ask me. And then I can be like, no.
Dream killer.
True savage. No, I'd probably be like, hi, I'll pay for you to go get financial advice so you can get out of this situation that you're in.
Yeah, that's cool.
And like set you up with a relationship because that'll cost me $5,000 and that's cool. But I'm not going to like, I don't know, I'm
just
hypothetically creating some people that have financial problems in my life. I don't think they do. But
it's like, I'm just going to teach you all how to be better with your money. And that's the gift that I'm giving you.
But that's the thing. Like otherwise everybody knows, well, how are you going to help the person anyway? If they don't help themselves. So anyway, okay, that rant over.
That. Yeah,
great.
nice.
One can dream.
Yeah. Anything
Moving
else on the
on.
Lotto? Any like common mistakes? I guess that.
Well,
did you see any?
I think it's just the people that, firstly, like have never really invested or done anything with money outside of perhaps like buying a house or spending it, and then they are naturally in a super beginner state and they don't really know where to start, and then. One thing I found funny about your answer was you're like, I'm going to go buy some stuff. And I'm like, of course, that's the natural impulses. Or like, I'm going to go buy out, like go on a holiday. Like one thing I read recently with the recent news coverage on the 50 million is that there was a recommendation from an advisor that if you were to win a serious amount, put it in a 6-month term deposit straight away to basically give yourself that like downtime.
Cool off
so
period.
That, so you don't make any short-term like panicked, really
like
emotional.
me answering that question.
Yeah,
I was like,
and it's like maybe, you know, that's a great idea. Like, I don't know, take $20,000 out and then put the rest aside, and then you can kind of blow your 20K on some fun stuff or a little holiday or doing some shopping or whatever.
Yeah.
But then you force yourself to have some downtime to really like cool off.
Yeah.
And then also if you do have people coming out of the woodwork to come and ask you for financial favors, you've got a genuine reason to be like, I don't even have access to the money right now. So come back in 6 months. And we'll
by then I'll move it into something else.
Yeah, exactly. By then I would have thought of a proper reason to say no to you.
Yeah. Or I'll divert you to my financial advisor where they will then say no.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so so that would be the main one.
Nice.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Question 2, I'm going to give this to you. So scenario is I'm currently living in New Zealand and I'm investing with Kernel. However, later on this year, I'm moving to the UK for 3 years to study, which is very exciting. I'm wondering if there's anything I need to do in terms of changing my investments or if I can just continue as normal.
Great questions. I have some questions.
Okay, classic move. Answer a question with another question. Sure.
Okay,
fine.
well, so like they're investing with Kernel, but do they want to take that money out to then use it for
I don't
study?
think so. The underlying sentiment I was getting from this question is no, they intend to just keep it. But it's like, does being overseas change anything materially?
Oh, I see. So it's not about like, are we moving closer to the goal of like needing the money?
No, I don't think so.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Well, if they're a New Zealand citizen or they have a close tie to New Zealand as a previous resident or something, then they can continue investing as normal. They just need to keep their New Zealand bank account, right? To then be able to withdraw and deposit and then transfer Wise money in and then keep going. So the answer is no, not really, as long as you have those things.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much it. And then basically for anyone that moves overseas, just being considerate of if and when your tax residency changes, like your actual physical residency, particularly if you're a New Zealand citizen passport holder, doesn't really matter if you end up being away from the country for more than 3 years. You still have like a close enough connection to New Zealand to maintain those types of accounts. And then, it's more about making sure that you are across your tax and providing any foreign tax details. But in this instance, given this person's studying, I'm like, they potentially are not going to be like working in the UK and paying tax in the UK, so it's kind of simplified.
Yeah, nice. Love it.
Yeah,
cool.
great.
Okay, I'm going to pass this last one back to you.
Great.
For those of you who've listened to our latest episode, which is private versus public schools.
Hot topic.
Yes, it
Great
is very
feedback.
hot. Keep it coming. There was just a discussion around, I mean, naturally there's like some higher decile schools in certain like suburbs or zones, and a lot of, people want to move into those zones to then be able to send their kids to those schools. So we had the question, are you better off paying more for a property to be in a grammar zone in Auckland or a zone with a like high decile school? Assumption is, let's say the house cost around $2 million, or sending your kids to private school, noting that the like average cost of a private school is roughly around $30,000, which can equate to like $150,000 over 5 years
for one child.
Sending them to high school from 9 to 13.
Yes. This is a really good question.
Yes.
We sort of briefly mentioned this in the episode, but we didn't really dig into kind of like what was the benefit.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is a really hard one to answer because there's so many moving parts and assumptions, right? So firstly, you have to consider like what's your ability to buy into a better school zone. If we're basing our assumption, and I think real estate agents do tell you this, that like there can be a $500K to $1 million premium just to get into some of the grammar school zones in Auckland for essentially the equivalent size house. And we talked about this recently actually I was looking at a property in the like bottom end of Mount Eden versus like the core grammar zone area, and there was literally $1 million price point between a similar type of property and those two parts of the same suburb, based on the school zoning, one would assume. So it really does depend. I think, if you're looking at that, Mark, like if you're coming in hot and this is the first house you're ever buying, that's a huge hurdle to overcome, right? Like if you're just trying to buy into a 2 million plus zone, you've got to have a really chunky deposit saved up, and you've got to have like really, really good serviceability. And so potentially, if that's your situation, like actually just paying for the private school that you're not locked into. So, like you kind of are locked into a house. That obviously does change. But you know what I mean? Yeah. If let's say you found that the private school either wasn't working or it was too hard financially, or actually you just like wasn't working for your child and you had another option, you're not locked into paying for that for the whole 5 years. But of course, if you have bought a house in a particular zone and then after 2 years you don't want to be there anymore, potentially you have just more consideration around whether that's the appropriate time to sell, and depending on what the market's doing and all that kind of stuff. So it's not necessarily as easy to just like turn off the house purchase in the same way that it is to turn off the school fees.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But if we're kind of also looking at it from a pure numbers point of view, like let's assume you've got 2 children and it's, as you mentioned, $30,000 per annum per kid, over 5 years, $60,000 per child, $300,000 total roughly just for tuition. That's a reasonable amount of dough. Based on a 7% interest rate, $60,000 a year is the interest payable on $850,000 of mortgage. Now, of course, that's only interest and you'll be paying like principal as well. Yep. But I just thought that was a good comparison point around like, well, $60,000 a year is not going to buy you a $2 million home. So there is that trade-off, and that's where it's like, well, it's not a black and white switch between. You still need a reasonable sum of capital and deposit and potentially equity from a prior purchase to then get into a school zone. And I think that's why, having seen a few people in the area that we are, because we are in a pretty hotly demanded like grammar school zone, having people that sort of buy into like the fringe of those suburbs, say when their child is at primary school, and go to the local primary school and then work towards obviously hopefully getting some equity in their house, paying down their mortgage, maybe saving up some more in then like the goal to kind of leapfrog into the middle of the suburb where there is like the grammar zoning space, or the bigger zoning space as well, and doing that kind of in advance. Because the other challenge with it is, let's say you don't have any forward planning and you do want to send your kid to a particular zoned school. You don't want to be a forced buyer like 12 months out before they start, because you're not necessarily going to have the time and flexibility to make a really good purchase.
Sound decision.
Exactly. So, I've heard of some people that have wanted to get their kid into grammar zones for senior, but they've bought basically when their child's like started intermediate, but they're still going to the local intermediate, and then they're sort of buying into the school zone like a couple of years in advance.
So that they can be there for the high school chunk?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, nice.
So...
what would you say about return on investment? Because obviously,
this is a great one,
like
right?
A kid's education basically versus potential capital gain.
Exactly. So I was literally chatting with someone in our team about this morning who, funnily enough, lives in the same suburb as me. Yeah. So is in a decent like grammar zone or school zone, and across her children did a split. So some of the kids went to private, some of the kids went to private and public, and some of the kids just kind of went to public. And she said to me personally, after having listened to the episode the other day, she was like, Kat, I think you guys should just try and stay where you are and put all the money into like getting a great property and not do the private school thing, and just plan for the like public school in a good zone scenario, and make that your like number one plan, and then have your backup plan as needing to opt in to private school if you were to find that any of your children had like learning challenges that then meant that environment would suit them. But she was like, put the money in your house, you're going to get the return on investment as opposed to necessarily like, are you going to get it?
You maybe can't like see in writing whether there's
300k return on investment on 2 children, like maybe not, you just don't know. And so that was kind of her thinking.
Well, was the thinking because like purely from numbers, or was it like what, is there any other context?
I think it was a little bit to do with, she just felt that, well, she reflected on when she first enrolled her kids into private school. She didn't really come at it with, like, she didn't think about it from a kind of ongoing cost perspective. It was more of a like, we can just scrape it all together to cover it year on year, and didn't think of it from a total cost, total investment point of view. And then also didn't really think of it from the opportunity cost point of view. And her view was like, well, having now put 3 kids through school, we really valued also being able to do other things. And I think they had the flexibility of other things having the children in public, as we talked about. And the other thing that she mentioned, which was hilarious because it made me kind of think about high school, was the like she said it's all the peripherals, and she made a comment about one of her kids that went to all private had to have more pocket money than the other kids because of the types of activities. And she's like, and the birthday presents and the things that child was doing with her social circle every weekend. And she's like, it was that kind of stuff that also adds up that you don't factor into it, that became less apparent when that child and the other kids moved to public.
Yeah, right. Yeah. She also, I think, because I had like a follow-on chat after, you guys obviously must have had this conversation, and she was saying about the teacher piece, which I know I made some bold statements about in terms of like,
but
pay and high
assumptions.
quality. Yeah, well, like if you come at it from like a private
corporate level job,
that's literally kind of what it is. But she said that she was talking to the daughter that went to both, so who started at private and then went to public. And she said, like, were the teachers better at one? She's like, she's like, Mum, they don't go to special teacher school.
They all go to the same training facilities, the same universities, the same education.
Yeah. But then the point that she did make is for schools like Auckland Grammar is that, because they offer things like Cambridge or IB or whatever, they do need to pay to get special teachers or teachers that have that experience. And so the example she used was she'd heard of Auckland Grammar basically bringing in teachers from England who had really good experience teaching Cambridge to then come teach there. And so, there are like other elements, I guess, of that. But that's Auckland Grammar is a public school as well. So I guess it really depends.
Yeah, exactly. And then I also had some feedback slide into my personal DMs post this from someone that is a teacher that has worked across public and private. And her comment was teachers move around anyway because they actually want like the job change. She's like, there's no real kind of like consistency that once you're in the private school sector, you only stay there. chances are they move around between the sectors and types of schools anyway, based on their personal requirements, their job challenges, that kind of thing. So she's
it's basically like private as well.
Yeah.
Like
so she's like,
whatever.
the quality of teaching thing, you basically end up getting the same.
Yeah. Okay, good.
So yeah.
Glad to debunk that myth.
Yes. Yes. But yeah, I think the property thing is just really interesting because it fits into a much bigger piece and a much bigger kind of planned piece. I would say as well, like, my kind of gut feel is, well, going through the decision point of trying to buy a property to be in a certain school zone, you're going to go through a ton of like financial checks and balances and hoops, right? You're going to be working with a broker. You're going to be making sure you can afford it. You're going to be setting your lifestyle up in a way that perhaps people don't do the equivalent to just send their kids to private school. They just kind of enroll them and then like
on you go,
hope for the best that it works out over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
And so there's an element there that I really like because
the flexibility.
Yeah, and the fact that you're kind of maybe doing a little bit more planning and checking through some stuff. But yeah, it's certainly no hard and fast rule or like blanket you know, answer. I think that suits people. I think it's really based on who you are, what your situation is, what you value.
Totally. And all on the flip side, just to counter, I hear like $300,000 and I'm like, that's a house deposit. Yeah. So it is truly what is important to you and all works with your lifestyle. So
yeah, exactly.
Love
so
it.
Yeah, fun topic.
Yeah, so good. Keep the questions coming at It's No Secret NZ on Instagram. We are loving the chats.
Loving the chats and we will see you next week.
Bye.